Sometimes I think life just loves to watch me fall. My first marriage? A beautiful wife who shattered my heart into tiny pieces. My second marriage? I thought I had found the one, but oh, how wrong I was. It's strange how you can convince yourself that you finally figured out life's tricks, only to realize too late that you're walking right into another disaster. I learned this the hard way. My first wife was a woman who could make heads turn just by stepping into a room. She had the kind of beauty that made you feel like the luckiest man alive. At least, that's what I thought at first. But with that beauty came a price. She knew she was desirable, and she made sure I never forgot it. She wasn't just my wife. She was a queen in her own little world, and I was just another courtier, serving her ego. I ignored the warning signs for years until one day I couldn't anymore. She cheated, and when I confronted her, she didn't even deny it. "You knew what you were getting into," she said with a shrug, as if her betrayal was just part of the deal. That line haunted me long after the ink dried on our divorce papers. After that, I made a vow, never again. No more gorgeous, high-maintenance women who knew their worth and used it as a weapon. I wasn't looking for a trophy wife. I was looking for peace. I wanted someone real, someone kind, someone who would see marriage as a partnership, not a game of power. I even joked to my friends that I'd rather stay single forever than fall for another woman who thought she was too good for me. And then, fate intervened. The house was a mess. I'd been living like a bachelor again for a few years, and let's just say cleaning wasn't high on my list of priorities. One day, I looked around and realized the place was practically begging for help. Dust on the shelves, dirty dishes piled high, and carpets that hadn't been vacuumed in months. So, I called a cleaning service. When the cleaning crew arrived, I wasn't expecting much, just a few people to get the job done and leave. But then she walked in. She wasn't stunning, at least not in the traditional sense. She was short, a little on the heavier side, with round cheeks that flushed pink when she laughed. But there was something about her that drew me in. She was quick, efficient, and had this infectious energy that filled the room. Every time she cracked a joke, her laughter was like a warm breeze that made the whole house feel lighter. She noticed the old photo of me and my first wife on the bookshelf and asked about it. I gave her the short version of the story, divorce, heartbreak, and all, and she just nodded with this look that said she understood. "Sounds like you need someone who's good at more than just cleaning up houses," she joked. I laughed, and for the first time in a long while, it wasn't forced. When the cleaning job was done, she handed me her card and told me to call if I ever needed the place cleaned again. But instead of waiting for the dust to pile up, I found myself calling her just to ask how her day was. Within a month, we were seeing each other regularly, and 3 months later, we were married. Fast? Yeah. But after everything I'd been through, I felt like I'd finally found what I was looking for. She wasn't just my wife, she was my anchor. The house was always warm, clean, and filled with the smell of freshly baked cookies or cinnamon rolls. She had a way of making everyone around her feel welcome, and our neighbors absolutely adored her. She would bring them homemade pies, invite their kids over for snacks, and organize small get-togethers just to brighten their day. I watched her effortlessly win over everyone she met, and for the first time in years, I felt like life had given me a second chance. Our home became a haven. I'd come home from work to find her humming in the kitchen, flour dusting her apron as she pulled another batch of muffins out of the oven. There was always something freshly baked on the counter, and she made sure I never left the house without a packed lunch or a kiss on the cheek. She was everything my first wife wasn't: thoughtful, nurturing, and completely devoted to making our life together as comfortable as possible. She had this way of making the ordinary feel special. On lazy Sunday mornings, she'd surprise me with breakfast in bed. If I had a rough day at work, she'd be waiting for me with my favorite meal and a warm hug. When I came down with the flu, she didn't leave my side, checking my temperature every few hours and making sure I had enough soup and tea. Our neighbors often joked that I'd hit the jackpot. "She's a keeper," one of them said during a barbecue. "Not many women like her around anymore." I knew they were right. I'd wake up every morning and think, this is it. This is the life I was meant to have. But deep down, there was always this tiny voice that wouldn't shut up. It whispered things like, "Isn't this too perfect?" Or, "What if this is just another illusion?" I tried to silence it, convincing myself that my past trauma was making me paranoid. But that voice, no matter how quiet, never really went away. Looking back now, I wish I'd listened to it. It started as an ordinary Tuesday, nothing unusual, nothing to hint at the storm that was about to turn my world upside down. I had a lunch scheduled with an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in a while. His name was Jake, and we used to hang out back in college before life pulled us in different directions. He worked in appliance repairs now, driving around town, fixing ovens, refrigerators, and whatever else broke down in suburban homes. When I saw him sitting at our usual spot in the diner, leaning back in his chair with that familiar, cocky grin, I felt a wave of nostalgia. For the first half of lunch, we traded harmless stories about old friends, failed relationships, and how much life had changed. It was nice catching up, hearing about someone else's life, instead of being trapped in the routine of my own. But then, the conversation took a turn I wasn't expecting. Extra cash and extra fun. Jake leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was about to reveal a big secret. "So, get this," he said, smirking. "You know how I've been doing these house calls for repairs? Well, some of them come with perks." I raised an eyebrow. "Perks?" "Yeah, man. Let's just say there are a lot of lonely housewives out there who are more than happy to pay me in other ways." He winked, taking a sip of his soda like it was the most casual thing in the world. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Come on, you're joking." "I'm dead serious," he said. "Take today, for example. I've got this job lined up at a house where the TV's on the fritz, but that's not why I'm going. The real reason is the woman who lives there. Big, curvy, and always ready to thank me properly. She's a great cook, too. Every time I go over, she's got fresh pastries or something waiting. Total package." Something about the way he described her made my stomach churn. I forced a laugh, pretending it was just another one of his wild stories, but the details gnawed at me. "So, she just invites you in for dessert and more?" "Pretty much," he said, grinning. "And get this, her gardener is in on it too. I guess he stops by for his turn when I'm not around." Jake laughed, oblivious to the way my face had gone pale. "I'm telling you, man, some women are just built for this kind of thing." As he kept talking, my mind raced. The way he described her, curvy, generous with food, a bit too friendly with the help, it all felt uncomfortably familiar. My wife was known for her baking, always sending neighbors home with treats and making sure everyone felt welcome. And today, of all days, we were expecting someone to come over and fix our TV. My heart pounded as the pieces started clicking into place. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was just a coincidence. There had to be hundreds of women in this town who fit that description. But the more I thought about it, the harder it was to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. I couldn't help but picture her, my wife in the kitchen, humming to herself as she baked something sweet, completely unaware of the suspicion creeping into my thoughts. Jake's voice snapped me back to reality. "Anyway, I better get going," he said, standing up and tossing a few bills onto the table. "Wouldn't want to keep her waiting?" I forced a smile and nodded, but inside, I was spiraling. As soon as Jake left, I grabbed my phone and checked the time. The TV repair guy was supposed to arrive around 5 p.m. I glanced at my watch. It was, barely 3:30. I had time. I told my boss I wasn't feeling well and left work early. On the drive home, my mind was a mess. What if I was wrong? What if I showed up and found nothing but my wife baking cookies like she always did? But what if I wasn't wrong? The thought of seeing her with someone else made my chest tighten. But I knew I had to see it with my own eyes. When I pulled up to the house, I parked a few houses down, far enough away that she wouldn't notice me. I waited, heart pounding, as the minutes dragged by. At exactly 4:55, a white van pulled into our driveway. My breath hitched as I saw Jake step out, toolbox in hand. He glanced around casually before heading to the front door. From my hiding spot, I had a clear view of the living room through the side window. My wife greeted him with her usual warm smile, the one that used to make me feel like the luckiest man alive. Today, it just made me feel sick. She was wearing a loose-fitting top with a neckline that dipped lower than usual, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was intentional. Jake got to work on the TV while she hovered nearby, offering him a glass of lemonade and laughing at something he said. At first, it seemed innocent enough, just two people making small talk. But then, things started to shift. She leaned over the couch to adjust something, giving Jake a clear view down her shirt. He didn't even try to hide the way he looked at her. My fists clenched as I watched him accidentally brush his hand against her hip. She didn't flinch or pull away. Instead, she giggled, playfully swatting him on the arm. With every passing minute, their touches became bolder. He'd pat her on the back, and his hand would linger just a little too long. She'd lean closer, her shoulder brushing against his as they talked. When she bent down to pick up a fallen remote, he smacked her lightly on the backside, and she just laughed, giving him a playful shove. I felt like I was watching a train wreck in slow motion. I wanted to burst through the door and stop it, but I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of concrete, and my hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the windowsill. Then she did something that made my stomach drop. She accidentally knocked a towel off the armrest of the couch and bent down to pick it up, giving Jake a full view of her thighs. The look they exchanged after that wasn't just friendly, it was a silent agreement. I could see where this was heading, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to keep watching. But I had to know the truth. Jake didn't waste a second. He stepped closer, and she turned her head toward him with that same playful smile that used to be mine, the one I thought she saved for me. He grabbed her by the waist, and she didn't resist. In fact, she leaned into him, her laughter fading as their bodies pressed together. I watched, frozen, as they kissed, slow and deliberate at first, but quickly escalating into something raw and primal. Jake's hands explored her curves like he'd done this before, like they both knew exactly where this was heading. When they sank to the floor, my stomach twisted into knots. I wanted to close my eyes to look away, but I couldn't. My fingers fumbled for my phone, and before I knew it, I was recording the scene unfolding before me. My hands trembled as I held the phone steady, capturing every second of the betrayal. I don't know why I did it, maybe for proof, maybe to confront her later, or maybe because some sick part of me needed to see it all to believe it was real. Their bodies moved together on the floor, oblivious to the world outside, oblivious to the man watching from the window with a shattered heart. I don't remember leaving. 1 minute, I was crouched by the window, my soul shattering with every second that passed. The next, I was in my car, driving aimlessly through town. My mind was a mess, replaying the scene over and over like a broken record. Her laughter, his, hands on her body, the way she melted into him without hesitation, as if I didn't exist. I pulled over at some random parking lot and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My chest felt like it was being crushed, and tears blurred my vision. I couldn't believe it. After everything, after my first marriage had left me broken and cautious, I had let myself trust again. I had let myself believe that this time would be different, but it wasn't. The rage came next, hot and all-consuming. How could she do this to me? I had given her everything, my time, my love, my trust. I thought she was different. I thought she loved me. I slammed my fists against the steering wheel, yelling into the empty car until my throat burned. But no amount of screaming could drown out the pain. By the time I pulled into our driveway that evening, I was numb. The fire in my chest had burned itself out, leaving only a hollow ache. I didn't know what I was going to say to her, but one thing was clear. This marriage was over. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, humming softly as she stirred a pot on the stove. The smell of freshly baked cookies filled the air, but instead of feeling comforted, I felt sick. How could she act so normal, as if nothing had happened? "Hey, you're home early," she said with a smile, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I made your favorite, chicken pot pie." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My fingers tightened around the phone in my pocket, the video burning a hole through my skin. She noticed the tension in my posture and tilted her head, concern flickering across her face. "Is everything okay?" I pulled out my phone and placed it on the kitchen counter, opening the video and hitting play. The sound of her laughter filled the room, followed by the unmistakable noise of clothes rustling and bodies moving together. Her face went pale, and she took a step back, covering her mouth with her hand. "Please," she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Let me explain." "Explain?" "What?" I snapped, my voice cold and unforgiving. "Explain how you've been screwing around with the TV repair guy? Or maybe you want to tell me about the gardener, too. How long has this been going on?" "It was a mistake," she sobbed, reaching for my arm, but I pulled away. I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lonely, and you've been so distant lately. I didn't think you'd find out." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I didn't think you'd find out." Not "I'm sorry," not it meant nothing, just an admission that she thought she could get away with it. "You didn't think I'd find out," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's what you're sorry for?" "No, I'm sorry for everything," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, I do. It was a stupid mistake, and it didn't mean anything. Please don't throw everything away because of this." But I was done listening, done hoping, done pretending that this wasn't exactly what my life had been building toward all along. The next morning, I was at the courthouse, filing for divorce. It didn't matter that she begged me to reconsider, that she promised to change, that she swore it would never happen again. I'd heard it all before. I heard it when my first wife begged me not to leave, promising that her affair was just a phase. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. As I sat in my car, the paperwork filed and the weight of the decision settling in, I couldn't help but wonder if I was cursed. I had chosen her because she wasn't a beauty queen, because she seemed grounded, loyal, and safe. I thought I was being smart, protecting myself from the pain of another betrayal. But it turned out beauty had nothing to do with it. Even the most ordinary-looking woman could have a heart full of secrets. I stared out the windshield, my mind racing with questions I'd probably never get answers to. Why me? Why again? How many times would I have to start over before life finally stopped kicking me while I was down? The world felt quiet around me, but inside, my thoughts screamed, even when you think you're playing it safe, betrayal will find you. Every damn time.